Quito, Ecuador. I'm Suni Gray and this is from the South, the Midday News Brief from Telesur English, and we start this new edition right now. We begin with a dramatic turn in the search for the Argentinian submarine that went missing without a trace last week. The Navy now says that an abnormal noise detected near the last known location of the submarine shortly after it disappeared was consistent with an explosion. A huge sea and air hunt is being conducted as the clock runs down for the San Juan submarine, which went missing with 44 crew on board. A Navy spokesman described the blast in the morning of November 15 as abnormal, short, violent, but non-nuclear. A group of Argentinians gathered outside the Mar del Plata naval base to support the families of the missing crew. Some of the relatives are increasingly angry at the way the search for the submarine has been handled by the Navy and by the government of Mauricio Macri.
We came here to support the boys, all 44 of them. We hope they're okay and that they will be home soon. We feel very emotional. We're sending strength to the families, great strength to the families, and our prayers day by day.
I feel cheated. I don't know if the others...
Has the submarine been found today?
No, it was not found, but they say it is 3,000 meters below the sea, so no. That's why I say they are swines. They knew about it and they are weak. That is my opinion.
The bosses steal the money, that's why this happened. They're villains 1,000 times over. They killed my brother because they sent him out there. I was in the Navy, they're all swine, including President Mauricio Macri.
Brazil has sent 3 vessels to join the search for the disappeared Argentine submarine. Fears about the amount of available oxygen on the submarine intensified the search for the vessel, which has been out of contact for 8 days. Other countries involved in the search include Chile, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom.
We are trying to reestablish communications with the submarine or locate it in the surface. We also use sonar technology in order to detect the objects under the water. The submarine can also emit sounds to draw the attention of ships involved in the search operation.
Cuba has rejected European Union sanctions that were placed on Venezuela last week, calling them counterproductive and coercive. The new sanctions put into place on November 13th, including a ban on arms sales and the export of military and surveillance equipment. Cuba's Deputy Foreign Minister, Rogelio Sierra Diaz, criticized the measures, noting that they interfere with the country's internal affairs and are counterproductive to the Bolivarian government's efforts to promote dialogue. The campaign for Venezuela's local elections is getting underway in Caracas and across the country. The candidates for 335 mayoral positions will have 15 days to seek the support of voters in each municipality before the campaign closes on December 7th. There will also be a runoff of the election of the governor of Zulia State on the same day, December 10th. President Nicolas Maduro said the opposition will not succeed in preventing the elections.
The right-wing opposition has a plan of sabotaging the economy to prevent the December 10th municipal elections. I can tell the opposition that come thunder or lightning, there will be elections in Venezuela to choose 335 new mayors. Everyone should vote for a new victory. Voting yes is the only way that we can achieve democracy. Vote no to the economic wall.
The Venezuelan state oil company PDVSA plans to export up to 2 billion cubic feet of gas to neighboring countries in the next 10 years through gas pipelines. Speaking at the Gas Exporting Countries Forum in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, PDVSA's Vice President of Natural Gas, Cesar Triana, said the company is in contract talks with its neighboring countries to export more than 600 million cubic feet per day. The country does not currently export natural gas. Jamaica is moving towards boosting its responsible use of energy in public buildings. The government has access to a combination of loans and grants to the tune of $40 million from various international agencies to fund the conversion and re-education project. At the signing ceremony for the loan from the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Jamaica's Minister of Technology explained how the funds would be used to action the energy efficiency and conservation program.
The EECP was designed to reduce energy consumption in the public sector by retrofitting government establishments with energy-efficient equipment, including cool roof, air conditioning, and solar control flame. Since 2014, some 800 persons in over 40 government MDAs were trained through seminars and workshops in the areas of energy conservation and energy efficiency to augment some Jamaican $1.1 billion worth of investment.
And we have more news in a minute, so stay with us. The 14th Latin American and Caribbean Feminist Meeting begins today in Uruguay. It involves more than 2,200 women from throughout the region. Our correspondent in Montevideo, Jose Sena, has all the details of this three-day meeting.
Un gusto saludarlos desde Montevideo, donde este día jueves.
Today in Montevideo, the 14th Latin American and Caribbean Feminist Meeting begins, championing the motto, diverse but not dispersed. Today is essentially Protocol Day, with the main event at the Solis Theater in the evening. Several workshops and seminars will start on Friday, with themes for debate including racism, diversity, and feminist economy. On Saturday, attendees will approve the various initiatives before a committee meeting. In the evening, there will be an anti-femicide protest titled Ni Una Menos, or Not One More, led by Uruguayan feminist organizations throughout the capital.
Violence in Honduras is surging as general elections are just days away. 3 activists from opposition parties have been killed ahead of general elections on November 26th. In preparation for the ballot, security forces have been deployed throughout the country. So let's take a look at what's happening in Honduras ahead of Sunday's votes and what the people actually think about the situation.
At first sight, life goes on in Honduras. In just a few days, general elections will take place in a country where over 60% of the population is poor.
There are no jobs or education. We need free schools because sometimes people with money just look after themselves, while the poor are hungry. And that doesn't make sense because we, the poor, are the ones mostly affected. We suffer all these negative changes. The rich don't suffer because they sleep on a pillow of dollars, unlike us, where we have to struggle to find a way to get 1 peso to feed our families.
They seem to have lost all respect for those who flaunt their wealth and also for those who aspire for political power.
I couldn't say if the one coming to power will be better or worse than the one we have now.
The candidate who's able to win the presidency will face these challenges. Just a few days ago, at least 5 political activists from different parties were killed. Experts assure that justice is not being dealt and violence is used as an electoral strategy.
This isn't new. The thing is that, as elections are moving closer, people talk more about this. But since the coup, social leaders have been killed, political party leaders as well, mostly from the opposition. We could say all of this becomes a day-to-day thing, but it's not really discussed. But when the elections come, it becomes more evident, and what they want to generate here is fear and panic, because almost immediately, security forces take to the streets with their faces covered, saying that they will take care of the situation. But it's been 7 years after the coup, and the situation has not improved. Independent security experts are creating false positives to generate a crisis.
Over 6 million people are registered to vote in a nation where voting is a duty, a right, but not an obligation.
On Friday, it will have been exactly 1 year since the signing of the peace agreements in Colombia, and the subsequent reports of its actual implementation have not been favorable. Of the 27 laws outlined, only 8 have been approved, and various sectors of the country have denounced the modification of some key aspects of the agreement that undermine the rights of victims, such as the special jurisdiction for peace.
The agreement must be fulfilled was the demand of demonstrators outside of the National Congress in Bogota. Pots and drums became a symbol of their indignation. Citizens are demanding that the national government and Congress implement the peace agreement and preserve the spirit and nature in which it was designed.
The threat of the far right to shred peace is not a threat. It is happening little by little, gradually becoming reality, not only because of the deviations of special justice for peace and the deviations of the laws in Congress, but also through a general aggression against the peace process, which became evident with the killings of former FARC rebels and other popular leaders.
At the same time, in the plenary of the Chamber of Representatives, there is a discussion around the statutory law that would legislate the special jurisdiction for peace. The debate started with 200 propositions to go back on the agreement even more. 90% of them were put forward by the Uribe Support Democratic Center Party.
These renegotiations are happening, and we're not in the agreement. Modifications to the agreement that go beyond the interest of parties or political sectors in the country, and not about favoring the peace agreement and result in leaving this long confrontation in our country.
For the FARC legal advisor, Diego Martinez, it is clear that these modifications to the peace jurisdiction are not only related to the far right's intention of destroying the peace agreement, but also the intentions of the Colombian high class and political elites to not implement justice in the country.
What the Congress is coming up with is a cornered peace jurisdiction, which means a full jurisdiction for the FARC with full conditions and no guarantees, especially for the victims and for what happened in the past to not happen again. Excluding third parties and to exclude state agents who are not militants could mean the guarantee for the conflict to continue, not from the FARC, but from the state.
A position that is shared by the youth who are mobilizing to defend the peace agreement. They consider that if the peace jurisdiction is approved with the modifications that the Congress has made, impunity will have open doors, allowing violence to continue.
The Peruvian authorities are raiding properties as the Odebrecht corruption probe intensifies. Investigators have raided at least a dozen properties in Lima as part of a widening investigation into alleged bribery of government officials by the Brazilian construction company. Last year, Odebrecht admitted to paying millions in bribes to secure government contracts and also to funding the presidential campaigns of both the opposition leader, Keiko Fujimori, and the president, Pedro Pablo Kaczynski. The investigators are trying to verify those allegations.
There could be some officials who were linked to the government. I still cannot give any details, but in a few hours I will give more information, not just of its outcome, but the people involved in the case.
University teachers and students are taking to the streets across Brazil to defend their rights on the National Day in Defense of Public Education. Our correspondent, Andre Ferreira, has more details from Rio de Janeiro.
Today in Brazil, we are celebrating the National Day in Defense of Public Education, in a country that has faced the neoliberal measures of Michel Temer's government, like cuts in the budget for public investments. In December of 2016, Brazil approved a freezing of public funds and public spending for 20 years, affecting the education sector. Today, all around the country, students and teachers from universities are denouncing these budget cuts to public universities. The governors from different states, most of them Michel Temer's allies, are promoting cuts for public education. An example of that is that the State University of Rio de Janeiro is facing possible closure, which is a consequence of these neoliberal measures. Students and teachers are demanding and defending the right to a good quality of public education.
We thank Andres for that report. It has been more than 3 years since their forced disappearance. Parents of the 43 Ayotzinapa students keep on demanding justice and that the Mexican government reveal the truth about their location. We have more in this report.
They're taking to the streets again, and they carry the portraits of their sons who were forcibly disappeared in September 2014. They demand justice and information about the location of the 43 students from the Raul Isidro Burgos' Ayotzinapa Teachers Training College. Their classmates remember them with a solemn count. He says that he still has plenty of reasons to keep on going with the struggle. Besides that, like today, the government still refuses to give him answers.
We came to remind Peña Nieto about the commitment he has with the relatives since October 28, 2014. That was when he said that no matter what, the government was going to find out the truth.
The case has already reached international bodies like the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and the IACHR disqualified the investigation, which was led by the Attorney General's office, saying that it's incomplete and manipulated.
We are here because the government hasn't resolved the problem. They've never supported us. We're orphans under this government.
This action is part of a bigger demonstration called To Break the Walls of Impunity, which is taking place simultaneously in Guerrero and in Mexico City.
Repression hasn't stopped, and we're worried that the police's orders were to shoot the students. After these 38 months and all these years of struggle, they're still shooting at us.
Relatives demand a deeper investigation into the possible participation of the army, the transportation of students by local police, the traffic of drugs to the United States, and the phone calls of the students that night on September the 26th. All of them are being investigated by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights.
We'll be back very soon, so stay with us. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri is now pushing for negotiations between all the political parties in the country after he announced he wasn't resigning his post. Our correspondent Hibai Arbidi has more from Beirut.
The negotiations have begun in Beirut after Saad Hariri announced he wasn't resigning from his duty as Prime Minister. Let's remember that Lebanon's President Michel Aoun didn't accept Hariri's resignation, and the Prime Minister promised to reconsider or postpone his decision only if there was a negotiation meeting between all the political parties in Lebanon to agree on the creation of a new government. People close to Hariri told the local media that the Prime Minister has demanded an agreement on Hezbollah's disarmament, as well as the organization's departure from Syria and Iraq. This objective could be hard to achieve since Lebanon has a weaker army than Hezbollah, and most importantly, because Hezbollah's leader said during his last public appearance that they are leaving Iraq, but that they will remain in Syria until they achieve military victory. With these demands, Hariri is showing that Saudi Arabia is accepting his decision to remain Prime Minister during these negotiation rounds, which could take months.
By Abidi there from Beirut. The United States threats to close the offices of the PLO in Washington has led to a strong reaction from Palestinians. Our correspondent in Gaza, Noor Harazin, has the story.
The Palestinian leadership on Tuesday suspended all meetings with the U.S. officials at various levels after the White House threatened to close the office of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, in the United States unless Palestinians were involved in real peace talks with Israel. In a sudden move last week, the U.S. State Department rejected to renew the operating license for the PLO's office in Washington. A rare provision in the U.S. law in 2015 allowed the shutter of the PLO's office if Palestinians acted against Israel at the International Criminal Court (ICC). The State Department believes that President Abbas went afoul of the law in September when he called on the ICC to prosecute Israeli officials for war crimes against Palestinians.
The non-renewal of the operating license of the PLO office in Washington, which hosted the signing of the Oslo Peace Accord between the PLO and Israel, terminates the U.S. role as a mediator in the peace process. This decision is completely denounced and rejected.
The legal provision allows the U.S. Secretary of State to renew the PLO's operating permit in the U.S. Capitol every 6 months, after making sure that its mission has complied with conditions posed by Congress. In 1994, President Bill Clinton allowed the PLO, the sole and legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, to open an office in Washington. Nohar Razin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
The Venezuelan government has released a statement acknowledging the leadership of former President Robert Mugabe, who led the process of liberation and founded the Republic of Zimbabwe, successfully confronting former colonial powers. The statement says that the Bolivarian government will continue to recognize Robert Mugabe as a friend and ally of the Bolivarian Revolution and the cause of the peoples who fight for their freedom and independence. During the last drought in Kenya, illegal farm invasions, cattle robberies, and violent deaths occurred in Laikipia County. Many farms were attacked and damaged in the long-lasting combat between Maasai farmers and security forces. These events have made people even more aware of the importance of peace, as our special correspondent in Kenya has been finding out.
We are at one of the private farms in Laikipia, with 49,000 acres according to George, a tour guide. As well as other farms in the zone, Mugi balances the production of livestock with the conservation of wildlife and tourism, but the actual owner is a white man that lives across the sea. During drought season, thousands of heads of cattle from Samburu farmers intensely invaded the farm. The land had an electrical fence, but the farmers coming from nearby areas who were affected by the drought and concerned about their cattle trespassed. Army forces who followed them into the area clashed with them, which ended in bloodbath.
Gangs of 50 to 100 people running around, all armed with assault weapons. Basically, it looked like an attempt to make the whole farm and conservancy unviable to manage.
Wildlife was also affected. According to the tour guide, Mugi lost 90% of the 2,000 buffalo population because of stress and diseases brought by the cows.
With civilization and after a lot of these ranches being converted into conservancy, we are now receiving a lot of wildlife back into our conservancies, and making Laikipia one of the very few regions in the world where wildlife population is increasing.
Business opportunities are also developing for them, and not only because of tourism. The directors have proposed a cooperation program with the communities, in which the farm would allow healthy cows to pasture and gain more than 80 pounds of weight in just a few months. They will be slaughtered afterwards and sold by weight. The farm gets 10% of the animal's price and a certain rate for the use of its grass. This new deal reveals the low profitability that many cattle ranchers get from their work and the path to be followed in order to improve their situation. But it also shows the inequality in the access to resources, because a single buffalo is fed using the same amount of space as the one shared by thousands of families in the surrounding areas.
The Spanish government has jailed more than 500 migrants in a Malaga prison as the waves of refugees arriving by boat on the country's coast have increased. Our correspondent Sergio Rodrigo has this report.
We're standing just outside the Archidona prison, a place where the Spanish government has jailed more than 500 migrants. They have been detained in a center that hasn't yet been inaugurated in violation of a Spanish law and its constitutional court. Their family members have arrived mainly from France to denounce the systematic violations of human rights from the government. They have said that they haven't been allowed to visit their loved ones since they were detained in open sea by the migration Spanish authorities, and also denounced that even children are being held in this prison. Social movements have insisted that the government should remedy the situation, although the Interior Ministry has been clear that the group of migrants will remain in the Argentine prison for 40 more days. Family members are pushing for the liberation without the help of any legal assistance. They have said that they will remain outside the prison building to protest against its violation of human rights.
And now here's some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Bangladesh has signed a deal with the government of Myanmar to return hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims who fled a recent army crackdown. According to a statement from the Bangladesh Foreign Ministry, the refugees could begin to return to Myanmar within 2 months. The displaced people are wary of returning as conditions in Myanmar remain unclear.
I don't trust the Myanmar government. My husband left 3 times and this is the 2nd time to leave. The Myanmar government is always like this.
Pressure is mounting on Germany's Social Democrats Party to consider offering coalition talks to Chancellor Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats Party to form a coalition government. This would settle the worst political crisis in modern German history. SPD leader Martin Schulz is due to meet President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who is holding talks to break the impasse. Papua New Guinea police have moved about 40 refugees and asylum seekers from a former Australian-run detention centre on Manus Island. Over 300 refugees remain who are refusing to leave, saying they fear being attacked by police. Australians protested the forced removal of the asylum seekers from the detention camp.
And we're sick of seeing the treatment of the Australian government enforced and inflicted on other poor people trying to have a safe life for their children. That's all these people want, is a safe life for their children. And what does the Australian government do to them? Lock them up! Lock them up!
Iraqi forces have launched a sweep through the western desert to flush out remaining Islamic State group fighters. Iraq's prime minister says the operation will be the final defeat of the militants in the country. The Iraqi army commanders say the military campaign will continue until all the frontier with Syria is secured to prevent the group from launching cross-border attacks.
And with that, we've come to the end of this midday news brief. For these and many other stories, you can check out our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Sony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.